I'm a victim of Lyme disease. I pride myself on having been a person devoted to physical fitness, a gym tragic you might say. And I've held a number of titles in the past, including Mr. Atlas for my strength and endurance. I'm careful with my diet, I don't smoke, I don't drink alcohol, I exercise every day, and I have worked hard all my life and achieved many ambitious goals. Imagine, therefore, the shock of being overtaken by a disease that brought me to my knees and almost cost my life. In March 2009, I contracted Lyme disease whilst bushwalking in Ku-ring-gai National Park on the northern beaches of Sydney. 6 to 8 nymph ticks burrowed into my torso, creating bullseye rashes around each site. Shortly after, I began suffering from bouts of flu-like symptoms such as body aches, intermittent fever, congestion and headaches. I also seemed to be shrinking within my clothes. These symptoms worsened and other symptoms evolved over time. Over the next 4 years, I got steadily worse, and local doctors were baffled trying to work out what was wrong. They did numerous tests, including a doctor suggesting to me that I had a mass in my hip that may be an indication of cancer, but the test did not bear that out.
5 years after infection, my husband became gravely ill. He had no energy, night sweats, restless leg syndrome, which caused all the bedclothes on our bed to drift off. He suffered intense cold despite being put into a warm bath or packed in hot water bottles. He lost the ability to hold a plate, to pull up his bedclothes. He could not sit up or down without help. Walking was a problem. Getting into the car required both legs to be lifted in manually. And eventually, he could not understand what people were saying to him or remember who they were, except for family. He was finding it hard to sleep for the pain, and restless legs were becoming more extreme. It was about this time that he told me that he thought he was about to die. I'd read an article many years previously about a girl who had contracted Lyme disease in Australia whilst visiting a deer farm in New South Wales. One day, walking through the city, we ran into a lady handing out pamphlets about Lyme disease printed by the Lyme Disease Association of Australia. The pamphlets reminded me of the article.
I requested a Lyme disease test from our regular doctor. He didn't know who did such tests in Australia. We contacted the Lyme Disease Association of Australia, who gave us a list of doctors in Melbourne, amongst which was a Lyme disease literate doctor, a doctor who specialised in treating people with this disease. He was booked out, but within a week or so we got a cancellation and went for the first consultation. The Lyme literate doctor arranged for a blood test to be sent to Germany, but even before the results came back positive, using clinical diagnosis, he began to map out immediate treatment. He was clearly able to recognise the symptoms of Lyme disease, which gave us great hope. The Lyme literate doctor began treatment with bicillin, and after 2 treatments, my head began to clear. I no longer felt so confused, and gradually I felt my strength returning and the pain decreasing. The Lyme literate doctor made a very important suggestion about the importance of getting to know your disease, and we felt this was invaluable. Knowing Lyme disease is caused by stealth bacteria is important because it can go into remission and appear to be cured, only to break out again. It can disguise itself to avoid detection by the immune system. Thus, the major defence anyone can have against it is to be sure their immune system is in peak condition to attack it whenever it raises its ugly head, and that they have a medical specialist on hand to treat it when it does emerge. Even after treatment, a number of years later, I walked down to the local primary school to pick up my youngest grandson. By the time I got there, I had a debilitating pain in my chest and had to support myself on the school gate. I asked my grandson to run to our house and get my wife to drive down and pick me up. She rang our local doctor, who told her to bring me in immediately. Our local doctor examined me, diagnosed a heart attack, and immediately called in an ambulance. On my way to hospital, a Canadian paramedic who was in the back with me, monitoring my vital signs, asked if I'd been infected with Lyme Borrelia. I now understand that Lyme carditis, that is inflammation of the heart muscle, is common with people with Lyme disease.
Lyme disease affects not just the person originally infected, but it can be passed to partners during sexual intercourse, from mother to child in the womb, and through blood transfusion. It is therefore a public health risk. Mark Jerome Waters, the author of 7 Modern Plagues and How We Are Causing Them, Island Press, Washington, USA, 2014, talks about Lyme disease as America's most common human disease at the time of writing, caused for the most part by the removal of forests and their biodiversity. He states that not only can it cause long-term debilitation and the inability of people to work, but may also cause death. Walters also mentions that epidemiologists have been expecting a flu-like pandemic that would wipe out millions of people, just like the Spanish flu had done after World War I, a pre-COVID warning. Lyme disease exists in every country in the world, and Australia is one of the worst countries in the world for biodiversity loss. Why should the Australian medical fraternity believe that we have escaped an Australian form of Borrelia, especially when the testing regime has been less than thorough? Forms of Borrelia have been found in a number of Australian mammals, and we import deer, the common carrier, from countries where the disease is rife.
I know that the Lyme literate doctor saved my life. If he'd not understood Lyme disease as well as he did and taken such swift action, I don't believe I'd be here today. That other patients desperately seeking relief from the terrible devastation of Lyme disease are being denied his expertise in caring treatment is, in our opinion, a travesty of the highest order. It's time Australian authorities woke up to the human suffering and loss of productivity created by ignoring Lyme disease.